and foreign language learners, especially adult beginners, often experience anxiety when developing speaking proficiency. For students to practice speaking in a low anxiety, immersive environment for multiple languages English, French, and Chinese. With our four panelists, we plan to discuss the possible tools, their affordance, appropriate instructional design, and activities suitable for VR delivery in the foreign language classroom. So these are the, yes, indeed. Thank you for showing up your key points. And then I invite Dr. Aleshia Hayes to give us a bit of a, idea about theoretical foundation of VR instructional design and implementation. There you go. Thank you. Okay, all right. No, I can hear you perfectly well. Yes.
You have a
Anyone has got a problem?
We can stand. That's okay.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. So to make sure we could be heard. So good evening, everyone. I guess I'm Dr. Aleshia Hayes. I'm a professor of learning technology at the University of North Texas, and my research focuses on immersive media and learning outcomes and representation. And I've actually partnered with faculty in linguistics and some UNT graduate students and UNT language faculty to talk about what ways we could leverage immersive media for language learning. So we began with this preliminary survey of what's already being done for language learning and immersive mediums. And as you know, we are not the first to consider this idea. But the first contribution that we felt that we could make was just looking at the way that we're approaching the discourse on immersive language learning and a clarification of terms. Specifically, we've seen in the age of COVID that people are referring to just about everything as virtual. So we have virtual meetings that range from Skype calls or Zoom meetings to being in a place like VirBELA as an avatar, or I've met with people who are actually in VirBELA in VR using hand gestures and things like that. And I've even seen meetings that are in games like Animal Crossing that are facilitated by using Discord calls. So to be clear, I love meeting with people face to face. And while I'm a VR researcher, I'm not exactly a VR enthusiast. I'm a strong believer that we should use VR only in certain circumstances when it's necessary. But language learning provides us a very good example of where highly immersive interactive VR could be useful. So for instance, VR should be used in circumstances where we're replacing something that is otherwise impossible. So maybe traveling across the world to practice our language skills, or when replacing some experience that is otherwise dangerous, and like right now, in the time of COVID, or replacing some experience that is otherwise prohibitively expensive, also something that would be super useful in language learning, and when creating an experience that we would like to have standardized replications of, also very salient with language learning. And actually, I wanted to fortunately, we discuss immersive learning tools. We're not limited to just VR. So I wanted to kind of go through levels of immersion. And I can't see. Oh, and you have my slide up already. Thank you so much. So there are levels of immersion. We have 2.5D, like what we are looking, most of us are in right now. I have VirBELA open on my laptop. Then we have 360-degree video, where you can have a seeing. Then we also have mixed reality, things like the Microsoft HoloLens, or also when you use a very large screen display and you use your own body as the controller would be examples of that. So you're interacting with the space. So it's a mixture of virtual and human reality, or physical reality. And then we have augmented reality that I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with Pokemon Go and things, where you have overlays of virtual objects on the real world. And then finally, what we would consider, or not finally, 360-degree interactive videos. So those are 360 videos, but 360 videos that instead of just looking around as a passive observer, you can actually interact with things in the video. And then we get to highly immersive, interactive virtual reality, where you can interact with people and objects in the space, and you can manipulate the space and things in it, and people in the space can interact with you. So when we talk about instructional design for language learning, we want to look at our goals, right? So just like Steve Covey, we begin with the end in mind. So working with this team, we've identified things that are primary objectives in language learning, and that's the next slide. So, and this is actually in a chapter that we just, some of us just submitted, talking about the affordances that different levels of immersion and VR provide. And one of the considerations, and I know this is supposed to be a panel that leads to a discussion, so we're all open to hearing what you have to say, but one of the considerations is which of the affordances that are available in virtual reality that seem relevant to language skill acquisition are actually necessary at different levels of learning. For instance, do we necessarily need highly interactive, immersive environments to learn vocabulary? Maybe it would be useful, but it's not necessary. On the other hand, we would absolutely benefit from highly interactive, immersive environments when we're trying to learn something like culture. For instance, when I went overseas last year, when we were still able to travel, I remember wishing that I was more comfortable just getting on trains and interacting with people. And that's a thing that you can practice in an immersive environment that right now we don't get to practice in a regular traditional language learning classroom. So, and I am not going to talk too much about the actual language skill acquisition because that's why these other experts are here with us.
Thank you. I'm Nanxi Meng. I could just step in, talk about these immersive language learning apps, how we see them, how we see them in language education, what kind of role they play, and what will be the ideal situation for the language educators to apply these available tools and immerse student in the language learning. So I want to. So on the slides, you could see I listed three highly marketable or like highly market-wise saturated tools listed here. The first one called Immerse Me. Many of you, if you're a language educator, you're probably aware of this company. This is a New Zealand company. What they do is like they use the 360-degree videos and allow students to project them on the computer monitor. So which, according to Dr. Hayes' definition, that will be a 2.5D immersive environment. So although the video itself allows students to drag and fully observe what's included in this 360-degree video, and it is actually projected on the monitor, which make it actually very friendly to classroom use or like everyday use for students, no matter at school, at home. So this is pretty affordable in terms of its use. However, we also found that in Immerse Me, many of these language functions or these settings are highly pre-programmed, which means the teachers cannot really design any instruction with this platform. So this is a predefined, pre-programmed app, and which it probably better for to leave it to students to explore by their interest, but this is probably not going to be a good tool in the formal education setting. And the second one I listed here is this Monthly. It has free version available if you search on the Apple's store or the Google store, and you can see this monthly non-immersive version available. However, monthly also have this immersive version in Oculus Rift or Steam, but it's gonna just cost several $100s to buy the goggle to go with these platforms and to be able to use monthly. Although this tool provides this highly immersive interactive experience, especially with communicative skills. And this virtual speech is recently a pretty popular tool, which used only for speakers to improve their English speaking skills, and they will provide this immersive environment to immerse people who want to practice their English skills in this virtual reality settings with a conference room, with the public presentation. All these scenes can potentially trigger this anxiety of the speakers, and this virtual speech tool is exactly addressing that. However, again, this tool is also highly programmed, and this is also not cheap. You probably find the price to be 150 and above to buy their service, to buy their course, and to completely go with them instead of like make this tool tailorable to the classroom use. So therefore, what we are really seeking, these really useful, these good, these affordable tools in the language education would be something we think ideally the teacher can use to design, to do their instructional design according to their needs, and the students who can get access to in their daily life, in their daily use. So for example, like Google Cardboard Box, use this cardboard box with your phone, with your monitors, and we think this could be easily accessible and something we can very quickly include in the classroom. And number three, we hope this materials provided to language learners could be authentic. And number four, which I personally think the most important, is to empower language educators and learners to contextualize what they learned. So I think the biggest feature of immersive environment is the contextualization of their learning context. So this will be a big features for the successful immersive learning environment. Yeah, I think number five, I just mentioned it. Just that's affordability for their everyday using, ideally starting from fall. So we're all looking forward to have fall semester starts. Language educators can really provide this distant contextualized language learning environment. Although we cannot meet our students, although we cannot take them study abroad, but we can still more or less achieve similar level when we're be able to face them, when we'll be able to communicate with them. Yeah, I can later we can come back and talk about each skills, how we can integrate the immersive learning environment into these skills. But I will give the floor to our next speaker, Qing, talk about students in different cultures, how they can benefit from the immersive learning environment.
That's great. That was indeed great. So we welcome the next speaker to talk about her idea.
Qing, can you hear us?
And can you hear us? Send her a private message.
Yeah, I mean, we if not, I think Laetitia can also maybe go next and give Qing a bit of time. Yeah.
All right, so we can have Laetitia next. Thank
That
you.
sounds good to me.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so full disclaimer, I'm very new to virtual reality, but I have been teaching French and foreign languages for many years now. And so the opportunities that the VR environment creates and offers to the students, to me, are just fascinating. So when my colleague talked to me about this conference, I looked at different tasks that would help learners improve on their speaking skills. And when I looked at the different programs that she talked about, there were a few that focused on different areas. For example, pronunciation and vocabulary activities, oral translation tasks, or more communicative and immersion activities. Like one of my colleagues said, of course, some of the lower level activities like the pronunciation or the oral translation tasks are things that do not have to come from AR or VR. These are things that can be done in a classroom, and really it becomes really interesting when you get into the immersion aspect or the communicative activities. So in terms of speaking tasks, there are different applications that people can use, that students and language teachers can use. So Nanxi talked about Mondly and Immersive. In terms of vocabulary, you could also have your learners just walk around different platforms, so they could go into Second Life or find some of the Kitely grid worlds, and they just walk around and just identify elements in the environment and point to those items, grab those items, name them into the target language. Because we also know that vocabulary is easier to learn and retain when you have that kinesthetic elements of grabbing the objects at the same time. Mondly and Immersive, they also have activities that focus on vocabulary. So you can see the first picture here is for Mondly, introduces vocabulary words in the target language with the English translation, and then the learners have to repeat the words. So there's like a cute little picture here of a lion. You can hear the lion roar, and then you have to repeat the words, and then you get some feedback. They have a voice recognition system, of course, that will provide feedback on how well you pronounce the words. Immersive also has a similar option. It's a little bit more open-ended because you get questions from the VR person that will focus on that vocabulary module.
Laetitia, have you
Yes.
displayed any PowerPoint slide on this screen?
I have. Are you not seeing it?
No, that is the reason. Oh, it is now.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not
Thank
sure.
you.
Okay, let me see.
I know it's gone.
Yeah, somehow my slides are not working, and that's okay.
Okay.
Let me go. Well, okay, if you give me just a minute.
I can see Qing coming, but then I can't. I'm sure that nobody can see your slides. It is all black about display.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I'm
Can
not
you
sure.
hear?
Hi. Yeah, we can.
Will be in Immersive to have an oral translation activity for each of the level and each of the modules that they have available. So in this situation, you are basically in front of the VR person, which is a native speaker, that will ask you a question in the target language, and then you have to provide an answer. But it's a translation of what you have on your screen. So you're a little bit more limited into what you can actually say. When it comes to more immersive and more communicative tasks, again, Mondly and ImmerseMe that my colleague Nanxi mentioned also have some activities that can be done. For Mondly, you will be in a scenario that you will be put into where a VR character will talk to you in a target language. So for example, you could be checking into a hotel and then you have the concierge that is asking you about your reservation, and then you have to provide the answers based on how you provide, based on how well you answer and how clearly your answer is, then the dialogue will continue. ImmerseMe has also a similar situation. This time it's not an animated character, it's a VR native speaker that is in front of you. So something where you would be at a bakery in France and then the person is asking you what you want to order, what you want to purchase. So you have to ask for a French baguette, for example, or a loaf of bread. And if you are able to produce that question properly in a clear manner, then the dialogue will continue. So the voice recognition system is able to analyze your answer and from there, move the dialogue forward. If the answer is not clear, the learner will also have the option to just click skip and then move on to the next question. So it's a semi-authentic dialogue where the native speaker will ask you a question or give you prompts that you have to then answer to continue the dialogue. In terms of interaction with native speakers that are not pre-recorded, of course, if you use one of the open source platform that are out there, or for example, something that is not necessarily for language learning, but Second Life or things like that, you can find native speakers within the world and engage in dialogues with them. This is not something that a teacher could necessarily monitor, but in terms of speaking production and practice, of course, it's ideal because it lowers your anxiety. You don't have to be face-to-face with a real person, but you still have the opportunity to talk to a native speaker through your avatar. For interactive VR games, in terms of speaking tasks, again, this is something that is, thinking a little bit outside the box, but I can imagine that if you do not have a huge budget, for example, and you just want to get some Google Cardboard, you could get on Google Earth, for example, and have your students do a scavenger hunt around Paris, where your students would still have to communicate with other students, find the clues. So they will still have to speak in the target language, but they will also get the culture and then the opportunity to walk around Paris. So I would love to hear about your experiences using VR as well to facilitate speaking production in a foreign language. If you've used any of the programs that we've talked about, what kind of activities you've done with them. I know that my colleague who were not able to talk earlier might be able to step in right now. Chinli,
yes,
I don't know
yes, I'm here, Laetitia. Thank you.
Thank you, Laetitia. It was a really great presentation, and we would discuss it further, that what activities can be actually designed for VR delivery in the foreign language. All right, thanks. And Qing, can I please invite you to talk about, to add on to what Laetitia has already and other people have talked about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry for the poor connection just now. Hi, everyone. I'd like to share a few thoughts on immersive environments for foreign language learning from the perspective of an educator practitioner. Actually, as language teachers, we find that foreign language students encounter anxiety and frustration all the time. And this has something to do with the feeling of helplessness during their learning. And this may come from low self-efficacy, low motivation for achievement, or emotional disorder, especially for those students who have always studied foreign languages just to pass examinations, which is quite typical here in China. It also may come from a strong sense of one's mother tongue. We understand that learning a language that is very similar to the native tongue could produce positive transfer, while the opposite situation would generate negative transfer. We hear the promotion of foreign language learning without the interference of the first language, the mother tongue, but in most cases, creating such a vacuum might be a mission impossible. And to throw a student who doesn't really speak the language well into an immersive environment that encourages target language only is like throwing someone who doesn't know how to swim into the water without any life belt. It will only discourage the students. So this is why early immersive theories were about how to balance the current language proficiency with the potential challenges to take. So if the challenge is too high and proficiency too low, students participated in the language learning process will lose control and feel anxious and frustrated. But if the proficiency is too high but challenge is too low, students would feel bored and lose interests. If both the proficiency and challenge are low, participants may just feel indifferent to the whole situation. And VR-based immersive learning method has been strongly recommended by so many people because it supports situated cognition, TPR, and learner autonomy, which all play a pivotal role in foreign language learning. But to create an immersive environment that empowers foreign language learners, it is not how heavily VR devices are applied to classroom use, but how clever. I think just now, Nanxi has mentioned that, for example, how to design tasks within students' reach, how to ensure that they have a chance to focus with lack of interruption, how to give them tasks with clear goals, how to make them feel a sense of control in the learning process, to give immediate and useful feedback, and to help students experience the loss of self-consciousness and self-concern. Actually, one of the courses I teach is interpreting from English to Chinese, and we have been integrating immersive tools such as virtual speech, the one Nanxi just mentioned, and also simulated a United Nations through video conferencing to reduce students' anxiety. The skill of public speaking is quite essential for interpreting skill set. And these tools actually allow students to rehearse their speech and upload their recordings or videos for evaluation, so the students could be much more prepared when they need to go on site. But unfortunately, the tools we have access to and can afford to integrate into our language classrooms are still quite limited. And most of them are apps on smartphones. So while we are making efforts to leverage what we have right now and to widen the scale, I hope everyone present at this panel today could share your experience and wisdom in this aspect. And thank you so much. Yeah, that's what I want to share. Thank you.
Whoa, that's great. Okay, so we can start the discussion on this. Do we have any questions from the audiences they would like to discuss or put any question forward to our panelists? Any brave one?
Yeah, just some quick pop in information while everybody is thinking for the thinking the questions for us. Actually, Dr. Hayes and I, like, we launched we want to launch this teacher training I hope series, and we'll talk about it. So we're really trying to, because of all these wonderful features of the immersive environment, because of this, in a way, this urgency and the necessity that because most likely in fall we cannot just go back to normal because of the COVID-19. So we found it to be very also urgent and necessary if we can train our teachers in the community to be the to begin with, just to see how immersive environment can really help with the K-12 teachers. So we're thinking about launching this teacher training sessions, and maybe in the first, so it could be a step of 3 or step of 4. So the first step could be like introducing the immersive environments, devices, affordance to the teachers. So get them have the basic to have them have the ground covered as the first session. And the second session we're planning to give the training on would be the available technology to address the specific language skills. Like many teachers would like out of intuition to say, okay, because there are more available tools to learn vocabulary, we're gonna just hammer vocabulary with heavy technology. But just like we said, vocabulary might actually be the least aspect of language learning. The teacher should really concerned with using the immersive environment, but rather how to design these like high quality speaking and activities with this immersive contextualized learning environment. It might be actually the top concern when we are losing all these opportunities of actually go on spot. And the third training series, we were thinking about maybe we can actually start to provide this instructional design in immersive learning environment. So how are we gonna, for example, if we're going to use a 2.5D immersive environment, let's say if we're going to use Google Expedition, if we're going to use Google Earth, if we're going to use Google Street View, how can we nicely insert these listening activities in it, speaking activities in it, or how we actually going to use this immersive environment as a prompt for students to be able to produce more output, more language materials in their reading, in their writing and in their speaking. And I personally, I haven't talked to Dr. Hayes just yet. I guess I'm talking to her right now also. Maybe at some point we could also do the fourth training session, which will be actually empowering teachers to be the material creator on these platforms. For example, Google Expedition actually allow teachers to create their own immersive materials. For example, we can do the 360 video in on the Great Wall, for example. And so teachers themselves could also be the material creator themselves instead of using whatever already existed there and to build in their activities. We want to eventually empower the teachers to be the material creators and instructional designers when they design these activities using these wonderful resources.
Wow, that's great, Nanxi. But we have Aleshia. Lindy has a question. She's raising her hand, and there are a few more questions coming up on the chat box. And it is basically Rahul Devekar has asked, speech recognition is incredibly inaccurate. I agree to that. Especially for non-native speakers, we have seen our students struggle with having their speech recognized. How do you address this issue? And to add on to that, it is also that have you used your tool with your foreign students? Once we handle the question from Lindy, we will come back to this one, and then Kylie, you will be the next one. All right, okay, Lindy, there you go.
So I can address it first, but I imagine all of us have different perspectives. This is Aleshia. And what I would say is that I absolutely agree. Speech recognition is not where we want it to be yet. And especially when you talk about recognizing speech when someone has an accent. So I really don't believe, I wouldn't even profess that the industry is capable of creating something even with the best of the best minds yet. But this is where I'm looking to things that people are doing informally. For instance, for a while now, people have been using Second Life for language activities. And now that we have something more immersive than we have many tools that are more immersive than Second Life, and also have a much easier entry level, because for many people, Second Life is too complex to use. Now we have things like AltSpace VR, VR chat, and even VirBELA as places that we can have interactions. And many people have groups where they meet with people of other languages and then practice their language with actual humans. And this is a thing that we really do even in the tech industry. It's like human in the loop simulation. For things that AI is not capable of doing, we still use people. Now, this can get costly unless you're looking at finding some mutually beneficial interaction, or maybe you have students of different languages working together, practicing. So I would love, for instance, to help people who speak French learn English if they could help me with my French accent.
Okay.
I'll pass this on to my colleagues here. What would you guys say? Because you are the language learning experts. I'm just the techie.
Yeah, actually, coincidentally, I read just this paper this afternoon in order to contribute to our book chapter. So I think there are quite a clear gap that between the apply immersive learning environment, or let's say apply VR in the classroom setting versus immerse language learning completely into the VR technology. I think there are two types of immersion here. Are we talking about to integrate the technology into the current classroom, or are we talking about integrate the entire language learning into the immersive environment? For the classroom teaching purposes, I think we're still, just like Dr. Hayes said, we're still targeting using whatever is available and putting these wisdom of use, of application into it, and to make the current classroom better. But if we want to heavily rely on the technology, say whatever we practice, the intellectual system gonna be able to pick it up. The intellectual system gonna do all the corrections for the learners. That might also generate a certain. First of all, our technology might not be there, or say if the technology is there, it's probably still very pricey for the normal classroom setting to be able to adopt it. Second, it might also cause heavily amount of frustration from the learner perspective, because when the technology really taking place of the instructors or of the teachers, they might also get frustrated, because after all, the technology is replacing the human being, which I think is not necessary. Just from the social perspective of the language learning per se.
Okay, that's really interesting, Nanxi. Now, I have another question coming up from Kaylee West. There you go, Kaylee.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay.
Can you hear?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
yes,
of
yes,
us
no, all
can
good.
hear her?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess it's a question, and I guess comments as well. So just wondering with Mondly, because I tried that. So I am from Monash University in Melbourne, Australia, and I coordinate the introductory level Chinese language and culture, and also the capstone unit as well, for those doing the major who then need to do the capstone unit to finish their major. But with the introductory level, we've used Second Life now for 12 years. We've had over 2,000 students do our lessons. But my question was more about, I had a look at Mondly a couple of years back, because it seemed to be a really good program. And with the speech recognition, it actually surprised me how good it was. But the thing that worried me was, and I guess this is the general question about quality control, when I looked at the responses from the virtual character in Chinese, to put it as politely as I can, it was rubbish. And I actually contacted the company and I said, hey, listen, we're here, we're experimenting, we'd love to, use something like this. Can we help you improve the quality of the Chinese? I don't speak any other languages. And we never got a response from them. So I guess my question is sort of around the question of quality and how do teachers that are looking to maybe use some of these technologies, how do they get greater control over the quality and also over the relevance? Because one thing I found with my students is if you're feeding them a lot of additional things that are not relevant to the core of what they're studying, often they feel resentful. So how do you kind of tie in what they're learning, what they have to learn? Because, I mean, even if it's K to 12, I'm sure you have fixed curriculums. How do you tie that in then with the technology?
Yep. Jed, do you want to share your experience with the quality control? Oh. I guess I can say a few things here. To me, as a instructor, I'm a Chinese instructor myself. So what I usually, I did notice also like students get very excited when they hear these bad words. I think that's the where the initial excitement of language learning first kick in. And what I usually do in the classroom, regardless of the immersive environment, I think it's always this evaluation could somehow control them better. So I could just say if I hear any of you, if the system recognize you with having more than 3 of these cursing words said, then you will be taking certain points off, or like your overall assessment will not be good, or not as good as you expected. I think it's just a matter of adding limitations to how students use the system might already be able to control us a little bit better.
Nanxi, sorry to interrupt, but I wasn't thinking more from that perspective. What I said with the Mondly stuff as being rubbish, the grammar was wrong. There was words from dialect. It was a mess. They obviously they've thrown. They have a standard English script and they've thrown it into Google Translate, and then they just put it straight into Mondly. And I don't want my students learning that grammar. The grammar was wrong. The words were wrong. The vocab was wrong, and I'm just sort of wondering then, it's more quality control at that end.
Sorry. I totally misunderstood your question. Yeah, just like we mentioned at the very beginning, maybe I did not make it very clear. Yes, I myself having this experience using Mondly and Immerse Me also. And what I've been observed is they put I'm sorry. I hope like what we're discussing here might just kept in this room, maybe for the better. So for example, in Immerse Me, what I noticed is they put a lot of dialectal words in it. At least for Chinese, I heard other users, they reported that using French will be a great experience. Using their English learning is a great experience. But with Chinese, what I myself experience is that there are a lot of dialectal words in it. There are a lot of words you only use in certain dialect would be included in it, or just like you said, the Google translation will be directly into it. That's why I think at my presentation at the very beginning, I found these to be really annoying, and they are pre-programmed. You cannot really change them at all. So what I would say to my students would be, these are great tools. You could play with it, but you might not fully rely on them. Or like if you feel anything weird, you could always use what we learned in class to check if they are correct. Like we, I mean, in the formal classroom learning, we always give students some like basic rules, like the sentence like the sentence structure. So we always have the subject at the beginning, and we always have the time, place, and manner followed, and we have adverbs follow, and we have verb follow. Then we have the object put at the very end. So when you use these tools, do you sense these sentences following this pattern? Do you sense anything weird? Maybe
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, sometimes I would also encourage them to. We have also this chat group. Like sometimes I would encourage them to post something they found that translated wrong, or like they found something doesn't match what we learned, and we can all talk about it. That way students also get this sharp eyes, and they actually enjoying finding these mistakes other people made.
That is brilliant, Nanxi.
So how many times do you get those kind of, the mistakes they have made? I mean, what is the ratio?
You mean in the like a monthly or immerse me system, or?
Yes.
I mean, for me, it's not just limited on these two. There are also one called like a Panda Chinese. Sometimes my students also use that, and sometimes they would just like take a screenshot and send to the chat group and say, "See, I found this hilarious, ha ha ha. This is I think pretty wrong, and this and that." And sometimes they actually even caught mistakes in our textbook. Sometimes like they mistype so the character doesn't match the pinyin provided. Of course, you have to be really good to find these mismatches. A lot of times students would very comfortable reading on the pinyin and did not realize actually the character doesn't really match the pinyin they were reading. And actually, I sometimes encourage them. I don't know if any of them did it, but I would encourage them. I say, maybe you should email the publishing company, and they probably give you a $20 coupon by pointing out this mistake.
One of the things that we end up, this is Aleshia, by the way. One of the things that we talk about a lot in our classes is the fact that whenever we see a problem with technology, we should also think of it as an opportunity. So this conversation, when we started doing the just basic survey of tools that were available, one of the things we found mirrors what you say, Kaylee West, and the fact that the higher level you get, these things that look really great when you're at basic levels start to fall apart, and they're not that great at deeper levels. But of course, part of why there is a Department of Learning Technologies is because we're trying to empower students to be able to work with technologists and subject matter experts and create solutions that don't exist yet. So maybe some of these problems are really opportunities that all of us should be thinking about how we can collaborate to create better solutions, particularly if Mondly is not responsive to you telling them that their product is giving rubbish translations.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think the thing that also comes through from what Nanxi is saying, and I would totally agree, and this ties into what you're saying about the collaboration between the different people, is, pedagogy is king. And sometimes we tend to look at things like, this is a great technology, let's see how we can use it. But maybe we should also be looking at, well, this is a good pedagogy, or I have a specific pedagogical problem that I face in my teaching, and how can, I either find technology that will help me solve that, or design technology. The pedagogy, I think, at the end of the day is the key.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you for the question. This is really a great question. I myself as a I'm a big fan of pedagogy, just to be honest with you. And I always also encourage my students to sometimes it's really interesting. Sometimes I would also ask them, so how do you think this activity, or how do you like this option? Do you like the I'm sorry, Quizlet, the group game, or do you like Kahoot, or do you like the matching game, or do you like the gravity game? So I think this very option will give the students this illusion that they are in control. Of course, ultimately it's still the instructor who's in control, but it's kind of like you give them the freedom it's kind of, I think it is also a way to appreciate their participation in this learning process.
It is. The pedagogy must come before technology. That's so true.
Yeah,
That was
exactly,
really
exactly.
interesting. Yes, very, very interesting. Kelly, do you have another question? Because you are raising your hand.
Oh, sorry. No, I'll turn that off. I'll turn that off. Sorry. I'm in a headset, so I can't see the UI. Sorry.
Okay, so all right. Now, do we have any other question from the audiences?
Yeah, just to piggyback again on the question we had earlier, I also noticed that no matter which app, I think majority of the apps, I don't know if all of them, when they are addressing these languages drastically different from the European languages or the Romantic languages, like French, like Spanish. I think for French and Spanish, even German, like I have experience using like a Duolingo or I forgot the name of the app. Like you can launch a rocket, like when you achieve the level, or Monthly or Immersive. They are pretty much following the same pattern of learning the European languages. But however, languages like Chinese, like Japanese, or like less commonly taught language here in the United States, like these critical languages like Arabic, I'm sure it's a big problem learning with following these European patterns might not work. But for many developers of these apps, as a language educator, we can still sense that there are a lot of unprofessional development in these apps, which telling us that the real language educators of these relatively less commonly taught languages are not really participating in the development of these tools. That's why we're kind of like using the same pattern to just very, very roughly cut it into language of all. But maybe the better way to address this issue would be to categorize language, to design according to the language family of each language, rather than using this one model fit all. I mean, we're talking about a lot of the personalized learning. Maybe the personalized language instructional design could be the next biggest challenge for the language app developers.
It will be, actually, despite there are so many challenges. It is still very unclear that, there are many exciting developments are taking place in this space. So it becomes quite important as an educator to keep, pace with these new developments, their risks, the importance, and how we can actually use them and the potential benefits, for learning. And the way we design the activity, it really changes from one space to another space. And that takes a lot of, thought that how the activity can be designed to represent an AR or VR world.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting, actually. Thank you very much. Now, do we have any more questions?
Yeah, question.
Okay. No more questions. Wow, okay. We are just on time. I think we are just 2 minutes ahead of time, actually. So we can actually take it. And can I ask everyone to clap and applaud and say thank you to our presenter? And then we can actually start a bit of dancing towards the end of the day.
Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Yes, go ahead,
Thank
please.
you.
Oh my God.
All of you can dance. Oh, wow. All of us can
We're
start
good.
and dance. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great evening if you're in the United States. It's getting
And
late.
have a great, I know, and have a great afternoon if you are in Australia.